This is a podcast by the Straits Times.
So what do you study and where do you study? And was it different from what your parents wanted you to study?
Well, obviously, no, I took the very traditional route, just did economics. So I was in my right mind. I think at the age of 13, I've known I've always been going back to my family company. Yeah, so ever since I was 13 years old, my family instilled it in my mind. Well, they kind of did instill it in my mind to say, oh, you're the first grandson, you're the son of the eldest son. You have to go back. You know, you have no. It's not like you have no choice, but they kind of like put in between the lines and say that, oh, you kind of have to go back.
How do young people inherit family wealth or family businesses? No matter how large or small the pot might be, young people still need to be prepared for the rigors of being a business owner or the custodian of wealth. So, how do they prepare to take over family businesses? What skills do they need and how do they gain experience? Hi, I'm Suen Tan, and you're listening to Headstart On Record. In the studio with me is Darren Hui, 24, whose family is in the property management business, and expert Kendrick Lee from Raffles Family Office. So for Darren, could you tell us a bit more about yourself and why you decided that you will take over the family business in the future?
Okay, so right now I am currently turning 25 this year. I've been working for the last 3 years, both in property management, finance, and currently I'm doing insurance brokerage. So when do I plan to take over my family company is probably not anytime soon. Right now, I'm still thinking about when I should decide to go back. Probably around my early 30s to late 20s. I'm planning to go back. Taking over wise, I'm probably going to take it over whenever my uncle or my dad retires. So maybe late 30s, I'm thinking of. Hopefully, that's my aspirations. But yeah.
So you still have quite a long runway to go, right? So what are you planning to do during this time to prepare yourself?
I think during this time, I'm still deciding on what kind of paths I want to do when I join my family company. So my family company right now, we're doing majority is in property management, but also in individual finances and investment deals, such as bonds and loans. But primarily, our money is in property management. So right now, I'm kind of in the middle of deciding if I want to be a part of the property management team or I want to kind of join the investment team within my family office. So right now, I think I'm leaning more towards the investment side. So I'm trying to put myself into bank situation, or right now in the investment brokerage, I am focusing on wealth planning, specific products with insurance, etc. Yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you're doing quite a wealth of things that might not be directly related to property management, right? So
Yeah.
is this like how you're gaining exposure, perhaps?
Yes, yeah, definitely. Like what my grandfather and my dad always say is, you can always come back and you can still learn the same thing. So right now I'm kind of trying to be more free because when I believe like if I go back to my family company, I'm going to stick into one thing and one thing only, which is property management. So I kind of want to expose myself since I'm in my early 20s. I have so much time to see what other things I could be doing, and see how I could continue or advance my knowledge in certain fields that interest me. So yeah.
Okay. And for Kendrick, as someone from a family office, what sort of programs or even boot camps do these sort of organizations offer for the next generation to get them ready to take over family businesses or family wealth?
Sure. For us at Raffles Family Office, what generally you do, it's to, we work with universities to actually educate, the next generation. We actually, expand the scope of what they learn in textbooks, right? We also talk and we also teach them about legacy planning, how, different asset classes come into play, how family governance comes into play. We also take internships for family members because when a family or the patriarch, the first generation, is preparing the next generation to take over the family business, sometimes it requires a whole lot of education in terms of different departments, the different needs and wants. So when we get them in as interns into our office, they actually go through the different departments and why different departments is very, very important, such as compliance. You talk about HR, finance is also required within the family office scope. We talk about investments. How does a portfolio look like? How does a family want a portfolio look like or what they want to achieve? And also more than that, what are the latest regulatory requirements? That's also very important. So we actually put them through that whole journey, the whole education phase. And then from there, how do they play a part in a family's wealth? So generally, we walk the journey with them.
Okay, so how do you explain like legacy planning and family governance?
Family governance, it's about understanding the family, right? So what do you want to put the house rules, I would say, most important house rules in play? So for instance, what structure is required? Who can draw something from their families at what age? These are just examples, right? And how does the family wants to structure, certain assets distribution, and at what percentage? What do they want to achieve? So that's family governance. So that actually sets the so-called the base for, we call it legacy planning. Because legacy means going through generations for the longest time and without disputes, without family getting a go at each other, thinking that it's unfair. So that is house rules that's set right from the start. And that brings you through the many generations.
And it's really interesting that you talked about going beyond the textbook, right? Because I think for Darren as well, like he's talking about gaining exposure in like other practical roles besides maybe what he might be doing in the future. So, how do you speak to like Darren trying to gain experience and exposure?
I believe being firsthand, being in the different jobs firsthand will help you understand a lot more about what you learn in the classroom. Working with experts, working with people with a lot of experience, with track records in the marketplace.
Okay, and Darren, so are there certain challenges that you think you face as someone who is preparing to take over, let's say, your family business in the future? Does it feel like daunting or scary in any way?
Oh yeah, definitely. For me, in my case, is so I come from a very traditional family. My grandparents, my dad, my uncles, they're very traditional people. And I'm the eldest son of the eldest son of my granddad. And so my dad's the eldest son, I'm the eldest son, so I'm the eldest grandson. So that's a lot of pressure for Chinese traditions. And especially I'm going to be the first one coming back into the company besides my cousins or my little brother. And it's definitely a lot of pressure and it is a bit daunting, but at the end, I feel like even now I'm only 24, I feel I have enough courage and more guts and more willingly feel accepted that I can go in and I can do my best. But yeah, definitely, I think some of the worrying parts is just being able to fit into that tradition. But also in my mind, I also kind of want to change the culture. But it's hard to change a culture of a company that's been already 70 years or in operation. So I think it's a bit daunting is to be able to adapt my mindset with their mindset, but also try to change it so that the future, so as in my cousins who comes in will be who doesn't have to deal with it, but also feel that they can assimilate well into the family ecosystem. But yeah.
So how do you navigate that? Like, how do you go about having those conversations with your like dad and granddad?
I think as of now, there's not that much conversation about it. So far, it's more so suck it up and just do it and just listen to what we have to do. But obviously, when the time comes and it's time to kind of like pass the baton on to me, and then obviously that's when they'll talk about. But for now, it's more so like how can I assimilate well to their perspective? Because I'm very I wouldn't say whitewashed, but I'm very westernized, and then I kind of have to go back into gear into the more traditional mindset, which that's why I've been working on calling for 3 years. So I'm kind of back into the traditional way of life and understanding and culture and kind of like, okay, I'm ready to go back, but I can adapt to what you guys are doing by hopefully maybe in 1 or 2 years, I can change the way they can think. But yeah.
Do you think it's also interesting that you can bring in like a Western perspective to a very traditional like Asian business?
I feel yes. I feel like I can make their ideas or the way that they think change, even though it's their kind of their blueprint, their backbone. Like I think more so like I have to show in ways that, oh, if you give me a certain amount of money, and I can prove to you, oh, I can follow this certain way and can still make money or stay consistent, right? Or if I, if I'm in property management, if I do so and so, like what are in a certain way that they might not like, but it works. I think it's just showing them bit by bit that, hey, maybe the way I do things might not be accepted by you, but it works. Then, maybe they will accept it at the end.
Okay. And Kendrick, are these some of the challenges that you also encounter when preparing the younger generation to take over like family businesses?
Definitely. When we deal with families, we always talk to the different generations because sometimes it's very difficult. I think what Darren says is very pertinent, right? Sometimes it's very difficult to bring across ideas, to the family. So what happens is, sometimes, even the investment mindset gap for us when we deal with the asset classes, it's also very different. For instance, the older generation will prefer the so-called the more conservative asset classes, your real estate and stuff like that. But the younger generation, they are really exposed to new asset classes, but they also think that that's the opportunity for now. So bring that together, there's a lot of challenges. So what happens is we as professionals, we come into play. We come in to mitigate that and bring both generations to sit on the same table. It's very important. And also coming from a professional angle, like, look, both are not wrong, but it's a matter of asset allocation, right? And also, what we are trying to do is actually draw out emotions and put in a lot of professional and logic into that structure or that conversation. So when we come into play from a professional angle, it's really about updating about market trends, right? So because even the finance industry is evolved over time. Just give you an example. Back in those days, before the 2008 financial crisis, many were just with 1-2 banks. But during the financial crisis, many started diversifying into different banks, right? Because of what's happened in the market. So it's about understanding what's in the marketplace. And then recently, people start to look at different jurisdictions, not just in different banks anymore because of the apparent geopolitical risk. So that's it. All this market information and what's happening in the marketplace, will be brought to the table. And then from a professional angle, what we think or what perceive is best for the family. So because what we're looking at is not these two generations, but the many generations to come. Right. So I think what Darren has mentioned, it's really quite pertinent in terms of, look, it's very difficult for a younger generation to bring ideas to the table and be accepted, right? Because this is the way of business for the longest time, right? So that's what we deal with, the families we manage.
And have you also seen in your experience, like, fathers, sons, grandfathers arguing over like the direction the business will go in, or like, culture change, like Darren said?
We do. In fact, not just grandfathers, fathers, sometimes even siblings. That happens as well in families because just different ideas come and nobody wants to let go of that, right? So having said that, it's so when we deal with families, I think it's also very important to be very clear. Are we dealing with the family business or are we dealing with the family office, which is the wealth management preservation side of things? More often than not in Asia, because family office has been, it's just a very new, it's just in a very nascent stage, I would say, unlike the US and Europe, which has been there for 100, 150 years. Here, it's still in a very nascent stage. So henceforth, from a family office perspective, when we talk to families about it, it's really when you need to educate them as to, look, these two are not the same, right? Family business has to look at it from the family business lens. The family office and wealth preservation side has to look from that lens. They should not be commingled. But here, it seems all the same.
Yeah.
So once you break that up, then you can talk to them very clearly. From family business side of things, it's what you want to achieve. You want to achieve business for the long run, then who is the right person to take over as a CEO or to lead the company for the interim or for the long run? Because ultimately the shareholder will still be the same family, so control will never be lost. It's just the leadership of the company.
Okay. I mean, that's really interesting. And I think, Darren, for you too, you've spoken about the pressure you face, right? In somewhat like you are trying to chart your own course, but you still have to know that you have this somewhat burden of knowledge that you will, in the future, have to be ready to take over family business and family wealth. So, as a young person who I'm sure has lots of ideas and lots of plans for his own life, like how do you balance that?
I think the best way to balance out, for me personally, I think is to go all out in your first few years of in your 20s, completely, free mind, free thinking, do whatever you want, pursue any career like what I'm doing, right? I've been a year in property management, a year in banking now. I just started doing insurance, wealth planning, and I'm just trying to find my way around it and see what else I want to do, but also like knowing the fact that I have to go back. I'm trying to kind of like it's kind of like the infinity stones, right? You're trying to pick out everything and try to get a good hang of each one, but also still be knowledgeable for each one of them and be also well diverse. So like for now, like I think the best way to balance that, I think I'm liking wealth planning and I'm gonna be sticking for it for a while. So I think it's to let go of certain things, but also, follow the path that you kind of see you want to pursue instead of following what your family does want you to do. Like, for example, my parents, they always say, oh, just do banking, stick to banking because it's the most basic. I wouldn't say easy, but the most like the go to career for anyone who goes into family offices afterwards. But for me, I feel like what Kendrick said about legacy planning, make sure everything doesn't, no one fights in between the families or there's no like alternative, and also planning for like the third, fourth generation, fifth generation, right? I feel like wealth planning is also part of that, the things I've learned from like, for example, the BOS wealth program, I think that's what kind of got me into wealth planning. So I kind of pushed myself towards wealth planning. I kind of enjoy it as much. So I kind of like with that pressure, I kind of drop it and just let it be and just kind of like focus on what I want to do right, for myself. And I feel like what everyone like, especially third generations or second generations get into their family company is to, you know, I think just do what you want to do. I feel like I have a lot of friends who are in the same circle as me. They all have that problem. Is like, oh, my parents say do so and so, but I want to do so and so. I feel like you should just, not let your parents' like noise or influence, dictate what you want to do in the future. I feel like everyone else is the same, everyone wants to do what they're passionate about. So just go for it. It doesn't matter if you have to go to your family office at the end. I feel like you should just pursue what you want to do at first and then work on the side or maybe like after what you're passionate about and then, go back to your family company. I feel it's like kind of like a gap year for us. You do what you want to do and then you go back to school. But in this case, your family office, right?
Wow, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, so what do you study and where do you study? And was it different from what your parents wanted you to study?
Well, obviously, no, I took the very traditional route and just did economics. So I was in my right mind. I think at the age of 13, I've known that I've always be going back to my family company. Yeah, so ever since I was 13 years old, my family instilled it in my mind. Well, they kind of did instill it in my mind to say, "Oh, you're the first grandson. You're the son of the eldest son. You have to go back. You have no well. It's not like you have no choice, but they kind of like put in between the lines and say that, oh, you kind of have to go back." So yeah, so ever since that day, I've been focusing my career path on just doing what's right for the family company. But I think like now, when I'm like in my mid 20s, I'm thinking about I do want to do things that I'm kind of more passionate about too, but also still following the path of going back to the family company. So that's my way of balancing out. It's just trying kind of prioritizing my what I want to do in my career, and not sticking to one career, but also just doing multiple careers. Try different occupations and that. Yeah.
Yeah, but Darren, I mean, to hear that, from the age of 13, you already had this like burden on your shoulders. How did your parents break it to you as a 13-year-old that, hey, this is going to be your future?
I think they broke it down to me. I think they just straight up just said, "Hey, you're the eldest grandson, but this is your life. Your dad, your uncles all went back to the family. Your cousins will be too. You're a male, especially you're a male. You have to go back. You kind of have to represent your family and just go and do it. Well, they didn't say you have to go straight back, but obviously they said, like I feel like this is what the most basic and the most like common thing every parent with or every family business says, like work outside for a couple of years and then come back. And that's the basic thing they gave me. So I talked about this like, with my other friends, and they said the same thing. Some of them actually just go straight back to the family, but some rather work outside for a bit and then go back. Yeah.
And Kendrick, what do you think of that? Like the option of going straight back or working outside first and then going back?
For us, like I mentioned earlier, right? It's really about, I believe in working your way up towards, taking over the company, right? Because right now it's really about looking at what's happening in the marketplace. That's very important. Even for us, even when we run this, and this is our 10th year, and we are now planning for the next few generations, right, to come. But our mindset is, or rather my mindset is that the next person that succeeds might not be my kid. Reason is that the best person should always take over that role, right? So having said that, my belief is always, go out, explore. So everyone, like Darren mentioned, everyone will have the different passions. Everyone will have the different interests. You might be a tech superstar in future. You might be a sports superstar in future. You never know, right? But of course, we come from a very traditional background. And generally speaking, it's always that few professions that your parents always hope you to be. But not everyone is cut out to be that. So I think having said that, go out, explore the different options, go out and gain more experience. And eventually, you will come back. Or if you ever come back, then that is basically what I believe should be the right way.
Okay, and are there certain skills the next generation needs to take over a family business or family wealth?
So also same thing, it's certain disciplines that you need to instill in yourself. Of course, you take over a company, a lot of different things. You have to be responsible. You have to look at top lines. You have to look at bottom lines, how the company, what's risk reward, what's cost income, stuff like that. All these, you have to, of course, take into consideration. And when you're out there working in the different industries or looking at the different, just the experience alone will help you, get through that.
And for yourself, right, you switched from being a national badminton player to like being now in a family office. So what was it about helping the next gen to inherit businesses and wealth that appealed to you?
Okay, when I was in sports, right, of course, there are other sports people that have bigger paychecks. But how they lead their life, how, that sudden pool of money that they achieve from prize monies and how they spend it on. What if this were to put into something more useful or invest in something better or protect it? Because these are hard-earned money. And sports, as we know, that is not something that comes every other day. It's only upon achievements and there's a lifespan to it. So if you put it and use it more responsibly, right, then that actually can put you into a much better use. So that gave me the incentive to say, like, look, okay, when eventually this is what I want to do, and maybe that's something I can help them with. So that switched from finance part.
Okay, I see. And when you think of your own children, right, are you also going to put some sort of like wealth planning or family legacy thing like in place for them when they grow older? Because you did mention that you don't expect them necessarily to take over the business, right?
Yes, of course. As a parent, so I have to look at a parent and a business owner. So that's two different things. So for my kids, we definitely as parents we will put certain financial instruments in place. But that's from the financial side of things. But because they're so young, what I want to instill them is actually a lot of discipline, right? A lot of motivation, a lot of goal settings. That is where I want to impart to them from that character value building stage. But for the other side, from a business owner perspective, they have to be viewed as one of the pool, not my kid. You have to earn your merits before you can come on board. Yeah.
So you will allow them to, go into business or even go into sports?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And my other one is in sports. So that's where because I came from that, I thought it would be good for him to also have that journey and have that to build certain discipline in him.
Okay, and I guess, family business have been in the spotlight with the CDL family saga earlier on this year. So do you think that there are some top ways for family businesses to manage their succession smoothly?
I think I speak about the families that we manage, right, in general speaking. So for the families that we manage, for that succession planning, it's always, sometimes getting their children with us as interns to understand what goes through the even portfolio construction, what goes through the thought process in terms of family constitution and family governance, investment governance, stuff like that, right? But when we come, we will always advise us to sit in. We will sit in and walk with them the whole journey with the different generations in place, right? To talk to them a lot about, okay, look, here are two generations. There are gaps, which I mentioned before. How do we propose that this be solved? How do we propose that certain things be put in place so that it can last for many generations? So for us, when we come into play, it's really not about the financial returns. Yes, it's important, but we always have to understand that 1-2% more returns will not change the lives of the families. They will not get another hour a day. They will not change a lot of other things. It won't move the dial. But what will help them is the peace of mind. And that's very, very important, which totally, and most of the time, it's underestimated. So what we insert is a lot of a lot of discipline, right? Which gives them a peace of mind and how, during tough times, a lot of risks are mitigated. So we want them to go to sleep peacefully at night without worrying about volatility, without worrying about what's happening tomorrow. Because for us, our thesis is family harmony means wealth preservation. But if family conflicts will always lead to wealth destruction. So that is something that if you have that right, then it's very easy to plan.
Okay, thanks very much for this. That's a wrap for this episode of Headstart on Record. Thank you to Kendrick and thank you, Darren. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Suen Tan. You can email us your thoughts on this issue or suggest another question you'd like to see me tackle next time on the show. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to read my articles and the Headstart newsletter, all these links are in our podcast show notes. This podcast episode is edited by Amirul Karim. Stay tuned then. Thanks for listening.
Send your feedback to podcast@sph.com.sg. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or within our Straits Times app. Thanks for listening. Do note, all analyses, opinions, recommendations, and other information in this podcast are for general information purposes only and are not intended to be relied upon as financial advice. You should not rely on them in making any decision. Please consult a fully qualified financial advisor or professional expert for independent advice and verification. To the fullest extent permitted by law, SPH Media shall not be liable for any loss arising from the use of or reliance on any analyses, opinions, recommendations, and other information in this podcast. SPH Media accepts no responsibility or liability whatsoever that may result or arise from the products, services, or information of any third parties. All opinions expressed by participants in this podcast are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of SPH Media.